Previously on Career Strategia. The operation to rescue the Umbra 1 crew was a great success, but the mission's mistakes have had consequences.
You can't just point a rocket in the sky and light the fuse. You have to verify that your trajectory reaches its destination and validate through complex calculations it'll work.
Certainly look into that, Senator.
The Umbra program was grounded pending investigation. So what happens next?
Nobody else knows what's this? I got to be the else now. There's no reason of it. It's not the house. Oh, well, you relax. You're going to get me this. You don't come in. Back off, running him up. I'm not so far. Get in my house. But I am with you. Please don't see me as a man. I go like my measure. There's a little bit west on it. And then it's not really neat. Okay, so remember Falconer Wahi EVAs? He's not Wahi with Terry Lawson Field interpreted under the future stalls there that we will miss the ticket. You were agree, that's nice in the first news now. Get in my house, but I may get down for those kind of my can't. What is it? I got ready to go out of your make, so why you fine, you're going to look at where we say, but we start stuff out in the dust, and then just hot. Everyone knows it is, and we're just letting a few in there. It all one in the mouth. It's now, it'll keep it up with us. It's going to get all right out down, and now you move it out. That's not scary. It's all here, so remember, Phil. Oh, yourself, yeah. Oh, he meters the Phil. Oh, green is to him. I'll do it right. Oh, here, so remember, Phil, it's Wahi EVAs, not Wahi with. There's a little bit west on it. And then it's not really neat. Get in my house, but I am with you. There's a little bit west on it. And then it's not really. Oh, yourself, yeah. Oh, he meters out. No. I think it's the next year. Oh, yourself, yeah. Oh, it's now, it'll keep it up with us.
Hey, it's Kyle here and welcome back to Career Strategia. It's been a while between episodes and a lot has happened to our fledgling space agency behind the scenes. But before we dive into that, let's quickly wrap up this satellite repair mission. So after the recovery of our 2 boosters, all 3 stages, our mission reward, and a few milestones, we're sitting pretty on 2.21 million. That's up from 2,087,000 after Umbra 1A returned. For some reason, the milestone for leaving Kerbon's sphere of influence was triggered, but we were nowhere near leaving the system. So I think a bit of debris from Umbra 1 heading out of the system may have been the culprit. So let's get started on Umbra 2, and here is our revised lander. Umbra 2's lander has all the same science equipment as on Umbra 1, including our materials bay, temperature and atmosphere unit, a mystery goo, and a magnetometer. This is all tucked inside our cargo wedges from the mod Universal Storage 2, which just makes for a more realistic design than using the cargo-style containers in the base game. The craft also has a thin Dragon fuel tank from the Kerbal reusability expansion, and the overall look of the craft has been updated using the restock mod. My mod list is quite extensive on this install, which long-time viewers will be aware of, and I've recently moved to a full manual install of all of the parts to improve compatibility and prevent any bad overwrite, which I've had mess up the install a few times. So if we put our new lander next to the Umbra 1 lander for comparison, you can see we have an extra 700 meters a second of delta V thanks to the Dragon fuel tank, and 2 extra tanks on the side which are part of the modular rockets mod. These tanks are basically the same as the white ball tanks from stock KSP and have about the same fuel as 2 of them side by side. Personally, I just think they look nicer and they're a bit more aerodynamic. We also now have a docking port on top with an adapter cone, which houses a monopropellant tank and a small battery. All up, minor upgrades to ensure we can return home safely this time around. As always, all these mods mentioned will be listed in the description. And with that, I think we've made Val and her team wait long enough, so it's time to get ourselves over to the launch pad. Now, you'll have to excuse me as we jump between the shiny new footage and the original footage of the mission. This flight was recorded quite a while back, and I decided to refly the launch and landing sequences so we could take advantage of the much nicer visuals I now have installed. As mentioned in previous videos, I recorded this whole run up to the Umbra Program quite a while back, but after the disappointment that was KSP2, I kind of had a hard time getting in the mood to create KSP1 content. So the original recordings have been sitting here for, almost 2 years, my bad. But I have reflown the flight from the save point just so we can have the nice visuals for the big moments, which I plan to do for all the future flights as we catch up. Anyway, let's meet our crew for the mission, with a few new faces joining KAXA's ranks because the second class of Kerbonauts, known as the Green Eggs, have finished their induction and training. First up, and we met him briefly earlier, is John Wise Kerman, who's been nicknamed J-Dub by the team. He was previously working as a professor of astrogeology at Cape University and helped analyse the Mun samples collected in the MOF program. His first flight was the satellite repair mission we just saw, and he's excited to finally conduct an EVA and bring home some sweet, sweet science. Next up is our new engineer, Megan Kerbane, who hails from Kerbon's Highlands and was working for Rockomax as an engine technician. All 3 liquid engines used in the Umbra launcher are from Rockomax, with the mainsail, skipper and poodle engines powering each stage of our launcher. Having her on hand for any troubleshooting will be a big help for the program. This will be her first ever mission, and unfortunately, she forgot her cool leather jacket at the crew's favourite bar.
Your jacket, though! Seriously, me again!
And last but not least, our mission commander, the first Kerbon in space and former test pilot for Kerbon Advanced Aeronautics, the awesome Valentina Kerman. This will be her 5th mission, having her first commander role during the Umbra Applications program, where its first mission was to repair the satellite we saw earlier. Having come so close to landing on the Mun with the Umbra 1A rescue mission, she's excited to finally get her chance to visit our closest celestial neighbour. Now, while we make our way to the Mun, let's bring you up to speed on what happened after the Umbra 1 rescue mission. Following the dramatic rescue, the Mun program was temporarily grounded, with a review of the program and its benefits being undertaken by a government committee. They wanted to ensure the technology used for travelling to the Mun would have other uses after the program eventually came to its end, leading to the birth of the Umbra Applications Program, or UMAP for short. The satellite servicing mission was the first demonstration of the program's use, and it earned us a nice cash bonus in the process. Now, after almost 12 months of waiting, KAXA has been given the green flag to go ahead and continue the Umbra missions to the Mun, with the occasional UMAP launches joining the flight manifest. And with our reusable Umbra Lifter platform, this shouldn't reduce how often we can launch, with KAXA's engineers getting much better at learning how to refit the return stages over the past year. Now, all this framing is really just to explain a few extra launches we have coming up to get ourselves some extra funds, and I feel like it makes sense as the Apollo Applications program was also set up for the same reasons. Alrighty, so our brave Kerbonauts have arrived in Mun orbit and are preparing for their descent to the surface. They've separated from the launcher's upper stage so we can slingshot that back around the Mun on a return trajectory and recover it for refurbishment, which is what we're setting the alarm for here. Back in the lander, the crew are getting ready for their deorbit burn. Their target is the colossal Farside crater. So as they conduct the last few experiments as they wait for their craft to arrive at their maneuver node, it's time to get ready to focus on the landing.
Carol, Sarah, member, Scalper, Flahy, Carol, Larson, Field. Runs, usually in the save me, get out there when there's. Easier, a little bit. Favorite task? We're discussing that. We're gonna discuss this. We're gonna on taking you from me doing that. Imagine you winning the 3 years of I've been like this tonight. I'm over here, you too, and turn on with the snow, we need to stop it. What is fine? You're ready to go out your make, so why you go? I'm sorry, you relax. Now, I'm over here, you too, and turn on with the snow, we need to stop it. There's another be west on it, and it just got in you, so now, I'm over here, you too, and over, I even thought we had something in the hand. Backing off running them over, I even thought we had something in the favorite task them. Ja, ich glaube, es wird definitiv so auf mir schon wenn es jemand der ganze Rede der Tage show. Ja, thank you very much.
The Umbra 2 crew are on their way home, and unlike the ill-fated Umbra 1 mission, they have more than enough fuel. The first part of their return, much like the Apollo missions, is a rendezvous. We're meeting up with the upper stage, which we left in Mun orbit. Now, we don't actually need this to return home, we've got plenty of fuel. Just before takeoff on the Mun, we had 1,850 meters a second of Delta V in the tank at launch, which is more than enough to plot a return journey to Kerbal. For reference, to get up to a low Mun orbit, you need a little under 600 meters a second and a touch under 1,200 meters a second to get back to Kerbal and circularize your orbit. However, if you use Kerbal's atmosphere to slow yourself down via aerobraking, you can get back using significantly less Delta V. In some cases, as low as 500 meters a second less if you're very precise with your maneuvers. And this does include waiting an extra orbit to do your deorbit burn at the apoapsis. Keep in mind you'll be coming in really hot if this is your plan.
Nice and hot. Yeah, boy.
So pack a heat shield and aim for the lowest point of your orbit to be around 50 to 55,000 meters inside of Kerbal's atmosphere. Anyway, back to the mission. We've aligned our orbit with the upper stage and we're getting ready for our rendezvous maneuver. We're going to be using our RCS thrusters for this maneuver as we approach, using the I, J, K and L keys that are on the keyboard, which are used as the RCS transition keys, to align our approach icon with the target icon on the nav board. This will be a full manual docking as we have no high-level crew members and no high-level probe cores, so we can't tell both crafts just to point at each other. This means we'll be making our approach nice and slow.
ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。
近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんでな。
ほうほう。では十分近づくがよい。
So with that JoJo reference made, we can get our journey home underway. The window you're seeing on the left of the screen is from a mod called Precise Node, which I'm using to fine-tune my orbit. Sure, we could use the built-in window in the bottom left, but I just find the interface of this quicker and easier to use due to the plus and minus buttons, instead of manually typing in the numbers every time I want to try something different. we're using the Poodle engines from our lander as our main engine for the return journey, as they get much better fuel efficiency in the vacuum compared to the upper stage's skipper engine, which is still a fantastic engine. The upper stage can get home with about half the fuel it currently has, so we're going to do a bit of fuel transferring as well to help balance the weight of the crafts. I really should set up fuel priority on these crafts one of these days so that certain tanks drain faster, but it's not that big of an issue realistically. This fuel transfer is also a good test for refueling our lander stage, so future missions could use the upper stage as a fuel storage depot to make multiple descents. But as this is career mode and we need the money, we're bringing back as many parts of the craft as we can for refund purposes. This means yes, both the upper stage and the first stage currently in low Kerbal orbit will be doing their re-entries too after we get the crew home. So with our tanks refilled and the weight redistributed, it's time to lower our orbit so we're closer to Kerbal. Now I'm doing this incredibly inefficiently. I'm burning at the midpoint of the orbit, but we have bucket loads of Delta V to spare, so no problem. Burning at this point affects both the apoapsis and periapsis point, shrinking both of them, while also shifting each of those points along the orbital plane. This is not a good way to deorbit your craft, and if I was being fuel conscious, I would wait until we'd return to the apoapsis point and burn there. However, the Umbra 2 crew are much more interested in getting back to Kerbal as fast as possible, while still recovering as many parts as we can, so they can share their collection of Munrocks with the team at the KSC. So we've undocked from the old upper stage, shifted our lander capsule to the side using our RCS thrusters, and we're now circularizing around Kerbal at 80,000 meters. The keen-eyed of you may have noticed that the burn indicator was telling us we won't have enough fuel to make it home, and that's a bit of a bug that sometimes pops up when you have two engines facing opposite directions. It tries to calculate the net outcome if both engines were to burn at the same time and push against each other. I think I may have had the skipper engine set to independent thrust instead of off, which was likely the cause for this. But I knew both parts had more than enough fuel in the tin to make it home, so I wasn't too fussed. After circularizing the orbit of our upper stage as well, it's time to plan our first of 3 re-entries. After the previous mission's haphazard landings, including a booster which ended up on the other side of the planet, this time we're focusing on getting our re-entry profiles right so we can land all 3 stages back at the KSC. For our lander, we'll be making full use of our parachutes while using our thrusters to soften the landing. While we do have plenty of fuel available to us with over 1,000 meters a second before our deorbit burn, we're not going to try for a powered landing this time around. The reason for this is our lander's Poodle engine. It's rated for vacuum performance, so it probably doesn't have enough thrust at sea level to land us safely at the moment. As this also has not had any upgrades from the tech tree, it's as weak as it can get, so we're better off not risking it. Nothing special about our deorbit trajectory, we're re-entering at a low angle, slowly easing through the atmosphere.
Ease down.
A couple of sonic booms courtesy of the rocket sound enhancement mod, and our re-entry is coming in as planned, and if we're doing a powered landing it will be an ideal time to start using some fins or air brakes to cut off that horizontal momentum. But alas, the boffins at R&D haven't discovered that angled surfaces can be used to increase our drag yet, so a final adjustment burn will help put us down right in the middle of the KSC before the parachutes fully open. I've got to say, I'm loving how re-entry looks with BlackRack's True Volumetric Clouds mod and their new Deferred Rendering mod. The sun peeking over the horizon as the crew parachutes down to the KSC is absolutely stunning with these visuals. I do still have a few more minor tweaks to make to refine my installs visuals, but they can wait. And with that, the Umbra 2 crew are safely home. Val, J-Dub and Megan can happily wait for the recovery team to head over to their location and begin the important process of helping our Kerbonauts out of their capsule after their 5-day stint in space. But before we get a look at how our finances are looking and what the folks in R&D can slap together for us, we need to bring back our 2 boosters currently sitting in LKO. First up, let's bring back our upper stage. As this stage has no landing legs, we're not going to try and land it on the ground. We're going to go straight for a splashdown just off the coast of the KSC, and we'll make full use of the parachutes. While the upper stage does have a much more powerful engine when compared to the lander stage, we're not going to get fancy here. We're following the exact same process as we did for our main lander with a nice splashdown at the end.
Great success!
Okay, last one. Time to bring back our main stage, and this time we're going for a true powered landing with our Mk3 Lifter. This is the first time we've tried this. Unfortunately, we are a little short on control systems technologically speaking. Our probe core's SAS only has the stabilize function available for it. Couple this with a small monopropellant supply and a very, very weak reaction wheel, and solid re-entry control was, a bit limited due to the hefty nature of the booster. To compensate, we're going for a very steep deorbit trajectory. We're aiming to slightly miss the KSC, and as we do so, use our boosters to adjust our drift during re-entry. It will use a little bit more delta V, but this will reduce the chance of us missing our target or hitting the KSC, even though re-entry will be a little on the hot side.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
We'll use the landing gears to give us a little extra drag as we come in to reduce that overshoot and try for our first powered landing of the Umbra Lifter series. We're only using our outer 4 engines of the booster, as otherwise our thrust to weight ratio ends up over 10, making it very hard to control the landing and adjust the thrust in a reasonable way. This was the only part of the mission I've had to actually refly, aside from reflying for visuals, and it took me a couple of goes to get it right. The booster is now so light that it's very keen to head back to orbit, and the limited control options made it a lot more challenging than I'd expected. But we got it down in the end.
Nice.
And that means it's time to look at what we've brought back. We've collected 303.8 science points, which takes us up to 345.7. Yes, it's more than we have listed here because we transmitted back a few experiments, which I glossed over a lot this time around. Financially, we're looking amazing. We're on 4,072,000 with change, and that's because I forgot to mention that between the satellite repair mission and the Umbra 2 mission, I agreed to a slightly ambitious communications relay contract which netted us a cool $2 million up front and put our bank account up to $4.21 million. Considering our stack costs us just under $200,000 and we got back $30,000 from the lander, $21.5 from the upper stage and $95,000 from our main booster, that's $50,000 per launch, and we aren't even recovering the SRBs yet. If we weren't recovering all these parts, our missions would be costing 4 times as much, but this is dependent on getting the parts back to the KSC to make it this much of a benefit. In my books, 100% worth the effort, especially in career mode. Megan has leveled up to level 1 following her trip into space, and both John Wise and Val have picked up some XP points as well. On the ribbon front, all 3 have picked up the MUN EVA and Fast Orbit ribbons alongside their Researcher ribbons increasing in rank. No firsts here, but that's to be expected. Thanks to that influx of cash, it's time to do some upgrading. First is the tracking station to improve our ground antenna strength and allow asteroid tracking, and second is upgrading mission control, which will remove the limit on the amount of contracts we can take on. Now that it's at level 3, it can't go any higher. Next up, research time. We need some air brakes and control surfaces so we can better control the boosters during re-entry and assist with returning more of them to the KSC. To get there, we'll pick up aerodynamics for 90 points and then advanced aerodynamics for 160 points. That leaves us with only 95 points left, which we'll save for now as we don't really need turbine or prop fans yet until we start making an SSTO. So with that out the way, I think it's time for a next episode preview. The Umbra program marches on with Umbra 3 and 4 pushing the limits for MUN exploration. Green Eggs, Gillamy, Wazor and Mary put the Umbra 3 lander through its paces with a daring landing in the MUN's canyons. An unnerving discovery leads to more questions about Kerbon's closest neighbour, leading to the first 5-crew launch in KAXA's history. A new craft, new research tools and a mystery that could change everything. Next time, shaken but not perturbed. And of course, plenty of tasteful rocket shots too. And that's where we're going to leave our crack team of Kerbonauts for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I've had a lot of fun making this one and getting back into Korea Strategia, but it took a little bit longer to finish just due to a general life stuff and a few computer issues. Next video will be the Artemis 5 mission, where I'm going to try and create the Blue Moon human landing system while we expand the Lunar Gateway with the Esprit module. Then it's back to Space Engineers for part 3 and 4 of the Martian Chronicles. I'm thinking of repurposing the planned spots for KSP2 videos into real space mission episodes like I did for the JUICE mission, possibly starting with a Juno sample return mission and some early Venus missions. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Who knows, I might even try creating an install for the Solar System mod RSS for these types of missions. That'll be a learning curve for sure. I'll keep plugging away at the list of planned videos, so thank you for sticking around during the past 12 months of low activity. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next pass.